Jeep CEO Carlos Tavares has given a serious warning to all electric vehicle (EV) producers: either stop making EVs or risk going bankrupt by 2030. Right now, EV companies are in trouble and people are not keen on buying EVs. The industry has faced losses of over $4 billion and many EVs are only sitting unsold at dealerships. This problem has worsened because of constant pressure from politicians, which has really hurt the future of EVs. But there's another side of the story nobody wants you to know about. In this video, prepare to be shocked and understand where this all began. Carlos Tavares has said directly, by 2030, you could all be facing bankruptcy. The EV market isn't as strong as you think. Out of the hype bubble now. This big statement could shake up the world of electric vehicles. But what is the reason behind his warning? He compares EVs to the Darwin's survival of the fittest theory, where only the strongest car companies will make it through. Tavares pointed out that many car makers are being pushed into making EVs mostly because of political reasons, even though it's expensive to make these cars and there aren't enough places to charge them. Making EVs cost a lot, and Tavares pointed out that this is causing automobile industries to lose money. Building EVs is more expensive than making regular gas cars. Jeep is trying to make the cost of EVs and gas cars the same by 2026. But it's risky. Big car companies like Ford and General Motors are also struggling. Ford is losing $36,000 for every electric F-150 Lightning truck they sell. General Motors had to cancel a big $5 billion project with Honda to make EVs because it wasn't making them enough money. These challenges are not only for Jeep, but for other big players too. For example, Tesla, a leader in EVs, has had to deal with problems like supply issues and more competition. They're staying strong because they're good at making batteries and running their business. But it's still a tough market. European car makers like Volkswagen and BMW are also putting a lot of money into EVs, seeing that people want these cars and the laws are changing. But investing so much money is challenging for them too. The electric vehicle (EV) market is also being shaped a lot by what the government decides. For example, President Biden is really pushing for more EVs. He wants 60% of all cars in the U.S. to run on batteries by 2030 and 67% by 2032. This push towards EVs, however, comes with its own set of challenges and dependencies. One of the main issues is that the U.S. becomes highly reliant on foreign sources for critical components needed for EVs, especially batteries. For example, a lot of the materials needed for EV batteries, like lithium and cobalt, come from countries like China. This reliance is important because it ties the U.S. auto industry to international suppliers and markets. If there are any political or economic changes in these supplier countries, it could impact the availability and cost of these crucial components in the U.S. This dependency on foreign sources for battery supplies does more than only affect the availability of these materials. It could also have broader implications for the entire auto industry in the U.S. If relationships with these supplier countries become strained, or if there are significant changes in the global market or politics, it could disrupt the supply chain. This disruption might lead to higher costs for EVs or delays in production, which could slow down the transition to electric vehicles in the U.S. On the other hand, former President Trump was more in favor of traditional gas cars and believed people should choose what kind of car they want. These different views from the two presidents make the EV market more complicated and uncertain. Big political events, like the next U.S. presidential election and the European Parliament election in 2024, might change how fast people start using EVs. But that is not it. Tavares' comments about the electric vehicle (EV) industry go beyond mere financials. He boldly stated EVs are destroying the middle class, criticizing the ongoing shift away from combustion engines as overly dogmatic. His concern centers around lithium, a critical component in EV batteries, and the broader issue of rare earth materials in limited supply. Tavares highlighted the considerable investment by Stellantis, Jeep's parent company, of an impressive $35.5 billion into EVs. Despite this, he's questioning the entire strategy behind EVs, mainly due to the rising costs of essential materials like lithium. As demand for these materials increases, so does the cost. potentially leading to a significant price hike in EVs. This could make them even less accessible to average consumers. Right now, the average cost of an EV is around $60,000, compared to about $48,000 for gas-powered vehicles. EVs potentially doubling in cost, making it an unrealistic option for many. He points out that the European Union's ban on combustion engines, meant to accelerate the shift to EVs, might need to be revised. This policy could force consumers to abandon their gas vehicles, even though EVs are currently about 40% more expensive. Such regulatory moves could push EV prices even higher. In response to these challenges, Tavares proposes a more balanced approach. He suggests that automakers should focus on producing EVs with a range of 30 to 60 miles, sufficient for most daily driving needs. Beyond that, he advocates for hybrid systems that don't rely solely on heavy EV batteries. Essentially, Tavares advises the industry to put only some of its eggs in the EV basket, considering the current limitations and market realities. This strategy could offer a more practical and economically feasible path forward, acknowledging the importance of EVs while also considering other viable technologies and consumer affordability. Jeep, led by Carlos Tavares, shows how a car company can change to meet new challenges. Even though Jeep had success with cars like the Avenger in Europe and the Wrangler 4xe, it's been selling fewer cars lately. Sales went down by 13.3% in 2022 and then dropped another 12% in the first half of 2023. This big drop in sales shows there are bigger problems in the car industry, maybe because what people want from cars is changing. To address its current challenges, Jeep is taking active steps to shift its strategy. They've appointed Antonio Filosa as their new leader. Filosa brings a wealth of experience from his time at Stellantis, Fiat, and the Mering Group. His appointment indicates Jeep's willingness to embrace new approaches and steer the company in a fresh direction. Jeep's challenges aren't only internal, they're also facing tough competition in the market. For instance, Ford's Bronco is increasingly outperforming Jeep's Wrangler in terms of popularity. More and more former Wrangler buyers are switching their preference to the Bronco. This shift in consumer choice is adding to the difficulties Jeep is currently facing, as they now have to contend not only with their internal issues, but also with the rising competition from other automakers like Ford. Tavares warns that the current trajectory of the EV market might not be the sustainable solution it's often portrayed as. He suggests that automakers currently losing money on EVs have about 2 to 3 years before facing potential collapse, provided EV adoption grows steadily. However, if the adoption rate faces more obstacles, they might get an extended time frame of 5 to 6 years. Clock is ticking fast. To tackle the challenges it faces, Jeep is taking proactive steps in the car market rather than only observing from the sidelines. The company is actively working on lowering the production costs of its vehicles. By doing this, they aim to reach profitability without having to sell a massive number of cars. In addition to these efforts, Jeep has formed a partnership with a Chinese electric vehicle manufacturer, Zhang Leapmotor Technologies Limited. This collaboration is proving to be financially beneficial for Jeep, as it allows them to cut costs significantly. They are now able to procure parts for their vehicles at a 30% lower cost compared to what other Western car companies typically spend. This strategic move is a part of Jeep's active response to the current market conditions, aiming to make their operations more cost-effective and competitive. While Jeep is planning to make a lot more electric cars by 2027 or 2028, they're being careful. They know there's a risk of making too many cars so people don't buy them as expected. So they're trying to find the right balance, making enough cars to meet the demand, but not so many that they end up with too many cars that no one wants to buy. Despite the challenges, Tavares is clear that the ultimate destination, electrification, isn't changing. Stellantis, the company that owns Jeep, has a big plan called Dare Forward 2030. They want to make $323 billion every year by the end of the decade. A big part of this plan is to sell a lot of electric cars. They're hoping that by 2030, half of all the cars they sell in the US and all the cars they sell in Europe will be electric. Jeep's latest agreement with the United Auto Workers Union highlights an important part of switching to electric cars: how it affects their workers. they're giving their workers in the U.S. who get a salary a choice to leave the company with some extra benefits. They're also offering $50,000 to workers who are ready to retire. This kind of offer is Jeep's way of handling the changes in their workforce as they move towards making more electric cars. The main key is more options. Tavares' alert is a big wake-up call for the whole car industry. Moving to electric cars should not be about who can make the fanciest EVs. It should focus on making EVs in a way that's both making money and lasting for a long time. The EV market is close to a big change, and car companies that can't handle the money and tech challenges of this change might get left behind in the next few years. The clock is ticking, and the future of lots of car companies is hanging in the balance. Would you buy an EV now? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Also, don't miss our video on President Biden's shocking warning to all EV makers for a detailed analysis on this development.